This is Tyrion.
I am Tyrion, heir of Aenarion.
But today, he's not Tyrion. He's going to be Aenarion the Defender. Because over 1,000 years after demons first invaded the world, Aenarion's wife, Astariel, the Everqueen of the Elves, was killed by a greater demon of Slaanesh, known as N'kari. In grief, Aenarion travelled to the Shrine of Khaine and drew the Widowmaker, also known as the Sword of Khaine. He fought for years, eventually killing 4 greater demons. So that is what we'll be attempting to recreate today. But before we can do that, as always, I need to tinker around with the Immortal Empire's map. So let's get started.
Ulthuan must prevail.
I'm going to change our starting settlement to Tor Anlik in the province of Naggareth, because that is where Aenarion was initially from. I'll then give control of most of Ulthuan to the demons, so it goes from looking like this to looking like this. Slaanesh holds the north, Tzeentch the east, Nurgle the south, and Khorne the west. Aenarion will need to personally kill N'kari, a Bloodthirster of Khorne which Scarbrand will represent, a Great Unclean One which Kugath Plaguefather will represent, and Kairos Fateweaver, using the Sword of Khaine. Aenarion must survive, and at the end of the campaign, bring the Sword of Khaine back to the Shrine of Khaine. Calador Dragon Tamer, once I've recruited him, must also survive, and at the end of the campaign, return to the Isle of the Dead, so he can create the Great Vortex and banish the demons from the world forever. I quickly realised that the start of this campaign would be the most difficult, because my home province was now an uninhabitable wasteland. Great. Starting out, my first task would be to build the Shrine of the Widowmaker so I could acquire the Sword of Khaine, and then get my mage to join my army. I then moved Aenarion towards the Shrine of Khorne so I could begin attacking N'kari, and recruiting some archers into my army. We were on turn 2, and the war had already begun.
This displeases me.
We could have got a decisive auto-resolve, but that would be boring. We still only had a small army, so we had to be fairly careful not to lose too many troops, but the army pushed forward. Aenarion began hacking away at the marauders, as I ordered my silver helms to hammer and anvil some of the demonettes. My mage was busy buffing up my spearmen, although I felt like the cavalry charge was quite anticlimactic. But it wasn't long before we had them running for the hills with Aenarion giving chase. Oi, get back here! Our first victory against Slaanesh was in the bag. Not long after this battle, I realised that N'kari was nearby and in march stance. It was risky, he was already pretty powerful, but we had to take our chance. We went for it. I laid siege in hopes that he would come out and fight me, and over the turn, he did. The terrain wasn't in our favour, we were at the bottom of a hill, but I made the most of it by employing some sort of square formation, which I thought looked pretty cool.
They think to cage us in, but is the lion trapped when cornered by the rat?
My lord, the demons are approaching quite rapidly down that hill.
When confronted by weaklings, no is...
Yeah, pretty much everyone was immediately killed. They broke through our lines. Yeah, it was an absolute massacre. N'kari was just having fun slapping my archers around, and then Aenarion began to run up. Aenarion, get back here and kill the demon that killed your wife! Stop running away! In fact, Aenarion running away was probably the only silver lining because he didn't die, meaning that we hadn't failed one of our objectives. I moved Aenarion's broken and battered army back to the Shrine of Khorne to recover. And then I was able to recruit Imric, who I swiftly renamed Calador Dragon Tamer. I performed another risky manoeuvre by sending Calador out as bait, and then by having Aenarion back him up in ambush stance, which seemed to work pretty well because over the turn, Slaanesh came out to get us and we caught him. The only other elven factions I left on Ulthuan were Khrace and Calador, and unfortunately, Khrace had been destroyed. That wasn't the only bad news either, because as it turned out, we would have to wait 10 turns in order to get the Sword of Khaine. After their successful ambush, I moved Aenarion and Calador back to the Shrine of Khorne. At his current power level and without the Widowmaker, Aenarion wasn't powerful enough to take on N'kari, so I had him go fight some of the other Slaanesh armies around to try and get him more powerful. We besieged the Phoenix Gate, and over the turn, they came out to get us. We set up near a tree line and awaited the forces of Slaanesh, and it wasn't long before hordes of demons were charging across the battlefield towards our position. The fighting on the front lines was immediately intense, with no one gaining the upper hand. I used our mage to debuff a large chunk of the enemy's army. I ordered my archers and Phoenix to focus their attacks on the initial wave of Slaaneshi forces to try and help ease the pressure on our defensive line. which worked to great effect because our Phoenix was going absolutely fucking mental. I had to pull some of my archers back because their lord had managed to sneak his way through, and as he and Aenarion were fighting, they were actually sort of killing some of my archers, which wasn't great. And Aenarion, stop killing your own men. Aenarion eventually got the upper hand though, and soon their lord was running for the hills. With their lord routing, the others soon fled too, under a hail of elven arrows. And victory was ours. With the Phoenix Gate under elven control once again, I moved Aenarion back to intercept N'kari, who was coming for Calador. Unfortunately, even if we defeated N'kari here, it wouldn't count towards our objective because we still didn't have the Sword of Khaine. Also, as Aenarion was the reinforcing army, Calador would have to survive on his own while the fiends of Slaanesh hunted him down, and there were a lot of them. Calador just had to hold out until reinforcements had arrived, but in a matter of moments, the chase was on. The forces of Slaanesh soon turned their attention away from Calador, as the horns of Aenarion's army could be heard in the distance. A wall of shields and spears awaited N'kari, and they were ready for a fight. A single cultist snuck round the back of my army, so Aenarion chopped his head off. Nice. N'kari once again attempted to break through our lines, so I had all of my archers all focus fire him at the same time.
Going forth!
This proved to be effective, but he was still crushing my soldiers with his crab hands. N'kari may have fallen here, but without the Sword of Khaine, he would be back. I had our mage casting spells to help out the right flank, who were suffering due to the lack of archer support, whilst Aenarion had got behind their lines to prepare for some hammer and anvil, which he carried out to great effect. The fiends of Slaanesh were becoming a bit of a problem, so Aenarion charged over there to help out too. And against the onslaught of demons, our line was holding. And it wasn't long before the marauders were fleeing in their droves, and the demons were sent back to the realm of chaos. Aenarion was again victorious. I tried to make a similar play with Calador acting as bait and Aenarion as an ambusher, but what I got over the turn was quite unexpected. N'kari was suing for peace, and Aenarion declined. And then we charged in and smashed them up. We were on the offensive with a few wins under our belt, and over the turn we had some great news. The Sword of Khaine was ready. Aenarion travelled to the Blighted Isle to retrieve the fabled blade, and as he drew it he knew that he was now ready to properly face the demons. With the Widowmaker in hand, it was time to finish off N'kari once and for all. I besieged him once again in the hopes that he would come out to fight me because, let's face it, nobody wants to fight settlement battles. And they came out to fight me, as per usual. Aenarion assembled his forces at a choke point near Tora Cheer, and waited for the demons to come. And it wasn't long before waves of demons could be seen in the distance. As they swarmed the choke point, it was clear that they outnumbered us. As they came within range, our mage assaulted them with a barrage of spells using the Law of Heavens, while buffing our own troops. Aenarion, wielding the Widowmaker, charged in. Now listen, I dealt a lot of damage to N'kari by focus firing him with my archers, but Aenarion definitely got the killing blow, as you can see here, so I'm going to take that as a win. That's one objective completed. N'kari has been banished. With all their units clumped up, I proceeded to drop a comet on their heads. Nice. Now that N'kari was dealt with, Aenarion could also use the power of the Sword of Khaine to its full potential. They had only sent a few units to the right-hand side choke point, which freed up a lot of my archers, allowing them to shoot onto the front lines. And between comets, Vortex creating swords, and a whole load of arrows, we pretty much had them on the run. And with the battle won, our first objective was complete. I quickly pushed on to secure the entire northern section of Ulthuan, and with only a few settlements left, over the next few turns we quickly cleared out the remaining forces of Slaanesh. And just like that, the weird crab tentacle hand man N'kari was no more. I put some points into some very thematic skills for Aenarion, which should make him a whole lot better at fighting demons. I also received this jug of dream wine, so now Aenarion could get pissed up and feel no pain while he was fighting. I also finally got round to recruiting some units for Calador's army. With N'kari out of the way, it was time to turn our attention to the west, and to Skarbrand, who seemed pretty happy about the entire ordeal. The next war had already begun, and it was us who struck first. My goal was to keep up the momentum and the pressure, and annihilate another one of the greater demons in quick succession. I probably bit a bit more off than I could chew with so many Khorne armies around. I retreated and Skarbrand gave chase, on his own, which was perfect. The sky was red, a clear sign of the blood god's anticipation of the coming battle. The greater demon of Khorne ordered his legions forward, and Aenarion rode out to meet them on his own. Aenarion rode through the ranks of demons, charging straight at the Bloodthirster, and as he drew near, the greater demon let out a vicious blow, seemingly killing the Elven King in one fell swoop. At least that's probably what Skarbrand thought, because he just started to walk away with Aenarion still chasing him. Skarbrand, turn around and fight, I'm trying to get a cool shot here. No, yeah, he just carried on walking with Aenarion just smacking him in the back occasionally until he was almost dead. And then, when he was almost dead, he finally turned around and, well, this happened. Yep, strongest Bloodthirster ever, just dead. And Aenarion was kind of like on and off his horse as well, so I don't know what was going on there. Aenarion wasn't finished though, as there were a few hero units left in Khorne's army. And that's another one dead. The last remaining leadership left in this army was a Blood Reaper, and Aenarion rode straight for him, and proceeded to basically just bully the hell out of him. While this was happening, the rest of their army had been on the move, and they were assaulting our hillside position. The Bloodletters were relentless, and our spearmen struggled to hold the line. Our mage had a new chariot and sent one of the Chaos Warriors flying, as well as a number of Bloodletters, as she rained comets down from the sky. With help from the archers, the mage on her new chariot, and Aenarion recently returned to the battlefield, our spearmen held the line. And it wasn't long before victory was ours. With another greater demon dead, another objective had been completed. Aenarion's army was pretty beaten up though, so I moved them back and used some elvish supplies to heal them.
Recover your strength.
With a short period of rest completed, it was time to get straight back to it, so we headed for the Griffin Gate.
Sunfang hungers.
Over the turn, they came out to fight us, and I didn't particularly like our chances, so I retreated to the other side of the gate apparently. I moved Aenarion back round so he'd be better positioned to defend our settlements. Over the turn we had our first decision to make about the Sword of Khaine, which wasn't really a decision because, well, we're keeping it. And getting straight back to war, we were heading back to the Griffin Gate. And this time it had no defenders, so it was an easy take. This section of the campaign was very much gate themed, as our next gate to take was the Eagle Gate. And this one did have defenders, and with a valiant defeat predicted, I had to fight this one manually. Our forces pushed in as our archers rained down a hail of arrows upon the defenders on the wall. Our soldiers ascended the walls quickly using siege ladders. Definitely not pocket or arse ladders. Aenarion and our Phoenix smashed through the gates but were unfortunately swarmed by waves of infantry. I threw comets at the walls hoping to clear a path for our attacking soldiers. The fighting on the walls was intense. In fact, it was going pretty fucking poorly actually. I mean, that's probably what I get for using spearmen and not upgrading my army. Aenarion finally broke through the blockade of infantry and charged straight towards their leader, who was immediately slapped out of existence. And with their leader dead, the gate was ours. Once again, Aenarion's army was pretty beaten up, so I had to add some regiments of renown to help bolster the ranks. And it's a good thing I did, because Skarbrand was already back and besieging the Eagle Gate. I didn't have the troops to effectively defend the walls, so I set everyone up in a tight defensive formation near one of the key points. I sent my skirmish cav out to deal with some of the less armoured units, and Aenarion to deal with Skarbrand. Aenarion took Skarbrand down pretty quickly because Skarbrand seemed intent on setting fire to his own troops. All it took was a final blow from the Widowmaker and Skarbrand was banished once again. The Elven King was pretty injured though, so I tried to get him back inside, but he kept getting stuck on these fucking dogs. No matter what I did, he just wouldn't move. I was close to activating the Sword of Khaine on literally one group of dogs. but I thought better of it. He did eventually manage to get away with those little bastards still chasing him. To give my archers as much time as possible, I tried using the Wind Blast spell to slow down their infantry, as well as debuffing them when they got into melee range. And it wouldn't be right without dropping a comet on their heads now, would it? My White Lions actually held the line pretty well against wave after wave of attackers. And despite over half my army being pretty much nearly dead, we actually did pretty well. Aenarion was once again victorious over Khorne. With a few wins against Khorne and his Bloodthirster under our belt, I spent the next few turns retaking settlement after settlement for the elves.
By lust or battle.
Until Skarbrand returned to defend Tor Alir, and my spearmen were looking just slightly too beaten up to be of much use. I decided to retreat and enact a riot and use the elven supplies again to replenish my army.
Heir of Aenarion. At last, some respite.
Over the turn though, Kairos decided he wanted in on the ongoing war, so I needed to get Khorne wrapped up as quickly as possible, so I went straight back in for another fight. Skarbrand couldn't resist and came out to get us immediately. They sent 4 units of Warhounds at us, which my skirmish cav and archers managed to pick off fairly easily. The plan was simple: get Aenarion to take out Skarbrand, and the rest should follow. Easier said than done, unfortunately, as Skarbrand had run past Aenarion, who was caught on some bloody dogs again, and now was heading directly for my battle lines. Imagine if you were an elf and you saw that running towards you, holy fuck. Of course, my spearmen stood absolutely no fucking chance. Annoyingly, Skarbrand had made a lot of my units rampage, which wasn't ideal, and then proceeded to kick 10 tons of shit out of them just for good measure. When the rampage was over, I tried getting my mage out of there as quickly as possible so she could continue casting spells. And as Aenarion had already killed Skarbrand before, I thought it was best to just shoot him with a whole load of arrows, because if there's one thing massive demons hate, it's non-armor piercing arrows. And it wasn't long before the crisis was over and Skarbrand was pretty much dead. Nice. And then the rest of their units we just cleaned up one by one using Wind, Sword of Khaine, and Comets. And victory was once again ours. That defeat signalled the beginning of the end for Skarbrand, because over the next few turns we pretty much took all of his territory.
By lust or battle.
During which we had another decision to make about the Sword of Khaine, and well, I mean, we were keeping it. And then continued our journey, banishing the rest of the Khornite demons from Ulthuan. Perfect. I also have a mod installed called Victory Conditions Overhaul, which I completely forgot about, and as I took this settlement off of Skarbrand, it triggered the victory condition. So, I mean, technically we won, I guess? Well, regardless, the exiles of Khorne were no more. While that was happening, my old buddy Kairos was doing everything in his power to undo all the work I'd done so far, and Tzeentch wasn't fucking around. He was coming at me with multiple armies across numerous provinces. In response to this, I made sure to recruit a few more units into Kalador's army. As we neared our first encounter with Nurgle, I noticed that we had a quest battle, and the reward was the dragon armour of Aenarion. Well, Aenarion just wouldn't be himself without wearing his fabled armour, so we had to go get it, even if it wasn't lore accurate. We'd have to kill some Dark Elves, who weren't really around at this point, so let's just say that these were some elves that pissed Aenarion off and they were fighting for the demons, and, well, Aenarion did this to them. Oh, crikey. It's no wonder I've got this one saved, as Aenarion gets his dragon armour via bullying. Aenarion charged at the demon-worshipping elf riding atop his dragon, and I don't know what was going on in this clusterfuck, but all I knew was that Aenarion was winning. See, look, he's running away. Coward! Yeah, I mean, we won that pretty easily, just pretty much using Aenarion, so that was great. But now we had the dragon armour. Our time for a new war with Nurgle had begun. If I could kill the Great Unclean One here and complete another objective, we might be able to push on and quickly eradicate Nurgle, so that we could get to Kairos and start defending our lands, as well as clear a path for Kalador. Aenarion tightly gripped the Widowmaker, awaiting the forces of Nurgle. Meanwhile, I hadn't learnt my lesson and employed a square formation again, which got immediately overrun because of course it did. That's the last time I used a fucking square formation. I had to immediately pull my archers back as my defensive line wasn't looking too good. Everyone was dying in the most foulest and grotesque ways, which was pretty on brand for Nurgle, to be fair to him. They were being thrown up on, they were being shit on, you know, the list just goes on. Meanwhile, Aenarion was somewhere in the forest having a whale of a time fighting Kugath Plaguefather. Kugath decided to stop fighting Aenarion for a second and threw a stink missile towards my forces. Bloody good shot too, sir. Eventually though, Aenarion did get the better of him, and our third greater demon was down, and our objective complete. Luckily, we weren't completely overrun yet, and the tide seemed to be turning, as I managed to get a few spells off, and Aenarion got back just in time to kill another great unclean one.
Bless my blade!
And despite being assaulted by a variety of fecal matter, the line held, and ultimately, we were victorious. Unfortunately, Tzeentch didn't let up, and kept rolling through my newly retaken lands, destroying everything in his path. Come on, Kairos, I get it, you're pissed off this video isn't about you, but it can't all be about you now, can it? That didn't deter us though, so we continued on our course and headed straight for Lothern to rid it of Nurgle's blight once and for all. They had a pretty sizable army garrisoned there, so I decided to use the Elven Dragon Scorch ability to make them all take some damage. Lore-wise, we can say that Aenarion got his dragon Indrognir to burn some of Nurgle's forces. And over the turn, a pretty beaten up army came out to get us, but they did have a pretty large garrison, so this wasn't going to be easy. The terrain wasn't in our favour, so we had to get our troops up the hill and take that position before their reinforcements arrived. I sent Aenarion ahead to deal with their leaders as per usual, which worked to great effect. My mage and archers managed to eliminate anyone that got too close without too much trouble, utilising a great chain lightning on some of their heavily armoured cavalry. And now it was time to push up and reposition ourselves at the top of the hill. Aenarion's army charged uphill, knowing that enemy reinforcements would be upon them at any moment. They had to move fast. But they had made it, just in time to turn and face the oncoming reinforcements. At this point in the campaign, Aenarion had become so powerful I genuinely felt sorry for any single entity that came onto the battlefield. Nurgle's forces were hardy and were able to endure much punishment, but we held the high ground advantage, and our archers made sure to make every arrow count. Yeah, Aenarion just slays demons, there's not much else to it. This is what he was renamed to do. And that was yet another win in the bag for Aenarion's Grand Army. Over the turn, a Tzeentch army tried to catch us straight after our battle with Nurgle, whilst we were slightly depleted. I'll let you see how that one turned out for them.
Honor bound, doing my duty, annihilate them! Aenarion.
Yeah, I won't lie, that was pretty fun, that battle. Yeah, look, okay, I'll level with you, and Aenarion with the Sword of Khaine is pretty powerful, but it's all for a good cause, so, you know, dead demons and that. Despite quite handily beating Nurgle in a battle where they came out of Lothern to fight me, for some reason the city was still in the disease-ridden grip of the Plague Bearers, so I abandoned my attack on the city and decided to take out other settlements to isolate them instead.
There is glory.
But time was of the essence, and I needed to take Lothern to continue on my warpath. I laid siege, retreated in my usual fashion, and then managed to get a weaker army to attack me. If I could beat them, then it would weaken their overall defences. The troops pushed up with Aenarion leading the charge. He charged straight towards the enemy lines, dodging artillery fire as he did so. And then immediately got stuck on drones, giant toads, and plague bearers. Aenarion wasn't able to stop the Soul Grinder from firing at his army, causing many casualties. This time, I'd had enough. I just immediately activated the Sword of Khaine.
Onward!
In Aenarion's extended absence, we were starting to get outflanked on the right, as plague drones swarmed our archers. Chain lightning came in handy once again to deal with the armoured cavalry, and our left flank was largely untouched, allowing us to focus fire on any units within range. Some of the demons were beginning to falter, as Aenarion finally returned to the front line to assist, riding past wave after wave of his own men? Reinforcements luckily arrived in time to bolster our failing right flank, and after that, it wasn't long before we secured victory. It didn't really feel like I was getting anywhere with Lothern. No matter how many Nurgle armies I defeated, another one was there to take its place. I managed to catch a small army out in the open and auto-resolved them easily. I decided to continue my strategy of trying to isolate Lothern, so I went out into the inner sea of Ulthuan, and Kugath followed me out there, but we'd already dealt with him numerous times, so he was getting auto-resolved. Calador got attacked by a couple Tzeentch armies, but luckily I had a fairly large garrison back in Tor Anlek, and Calador's army was looking pretty good now too. I went to take the Shrine of Aenarion as it got me closer to my last objective in Kairos, which worked like a charm because the next turn began and there he was staring me in the face. This was my chance to banish the final demon. By nightfall, the battle at Aenarion's shrine had already begun. Aenarion's warriors faced their biggest challenge yet. Ranged firepower equal to that of their own, monsters, and above all, magic. A bombardment of magical missiles and fire crashed into the elven defenders. They targeted Aenarion's own magical capabilities and his trusted mage. Lines were burned away with the fire of the God of Change. Monsters of other dimensions tore through spear and shield alike. The twin-headed Lord of Change landed behind the defensive line of Aenarion's troops and caused utter panic and chaos. That wasn't until Aenarion got to him and promptly stuck him with the pointy end of the Widowmaker. Kairos had overextended and fell before the Elven King, banished back to the realm of chaos. Without their leader, the forces of Tzeentch were thrown into disarray. Aenarion commanded his mage to lay waste to the rest of the attackers. As a volley of arrows hit their mark, the archers no longer harried by flyers. The battle, and our final objective, was complete.
We move together.
With all 4 demons defeated, it was time to get Aenarion back to the Shrine of Khaine and Calador to the Isle of the Dead. I did feel like the only true way I could represent the Great Vortex working though, was to completely eliminate all demons from Ulthuan, so I set out to do that as well. I began by moving Calador inland and taking back the Phoenix Gate that I'd lost to Tzeentch, and then by having Aenarion continue to eradicate the last of the Nurgle strongholds.
Lust or battle.
I managed to push Calador on in the same turn by using Elven initiative, so he was able to take back another settlement. While I continued to move Calador closer to the Isle of the Dead, I had once again besieged Lothern with Aenarion, and Kugath was suing for peace. And also, love? Nah, I don't think so, but I will be taking the city. After numerous attempts, Lothern was finally under Elven control. Calador continued his march inland to prepare for the Great Vortex.
They will know Calador's name.
And Aenarion had free reign over the south of Ulthuan. It wouldn't be long before Nurgle was completely eradicated.
There is glory to be won.
And speaking of eradication, it's funny I should mention that, because it happened on the next turn. The Poxmakers of Nurgle had been banished from Ulthuan. Aenarion continued his push along the entire eastern coast of Ulthuan, banishing demons and freeing his people wherever he might find them. Kairos, mustering the remainder of his power, attempted to sway the Elven King's mind. Yeah, he also sued for peace. Aenarion was having none of it though, and he continued his onslaught of all demon kind. As Calador approached the Isle of the Dead, a last stand of Tzeentch forces awaited him. He would have to deal with this one last final battle before he could make his homeland safe. Calador was so close to achieving his goals, and no Lord of Change, no matter how powerful, would stop him after he had come so far. The demonic forces attacked with everything they had left, crashing into the Phoenix Guard with sword, spell, and beast. Calador and Kairos fought for aerial superiority in the skies above the carnage. Elven archers took down Vortex beasts, as great phoenixes crashed into blue horrors. Lothern Sea Guard valiantly fought off marauders and chaos furies from all sides. Calador had got the better of the Lord of Change, pushing the advantage for Elven forces. Unmatched in the skies, Calador was able to destroy the Chaos ground forces with his Dragon's Breath weapon, and tear apart flamers of Tzeentch. And it wasn't long before what was left of the Chaos forces was either banished, killed, or in full retreat. Caledor had won.
We'll claim it.
With Tzeentch defeated and the final battle won, Caledor completed the ritual and summoned the Great Vortex, draining magical power and ending the demon incursion. Aenarion, mortally wounded in the fighting, was brought back to the Blighted Isle and returned the Widowmaker to its rightful resting place, before dying. Together, they had brought peace to a war-weary land and people, and made their homeland safe once again. Thanks for watching. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. I want to continuously improve with each video, and you can help me by leaving a comment and telling me what you did or didn't like. Any constructive feedback is welcome and appreciated. If you'd like to see more like this, then don't forget to subscribe. Would you guys like to see another lore-based campaign or something slightly different? Let me know. But until then, I'll see you in the next one.